Hey Addicts, welcome back. We're here to talk about Alita. And yes, I do have a correction to make because I didn't know, or I didn't think we were going to be talking about Alita again, but it was brought to my attention in the Volume 9 review that there was some misinformation that I accidentally put out there, so I want to make the correction because I don't like being misinformative, and so, especially for new readers, I feel like there's probably going to be a bunch of new readers coming now that the movie has been out, or might be checking it out because they liked the movie or whatever. So I wanted to make the correction just so that we could be clear, and then also kind of go over my thoughts to see if anything changed. And I'm going to show the edition just like it is here, so that way you kind of get a bit better understanding. So this is where we talked about where Alita gets blown up by Dusty, and then him, kind of pronouncing that he had won. And it goes into the bomb saying that is the end, right? And then that leads into the following page where we get this note, which I had brought up in the volume review. And it's not very clear in some of the information that it gives in this note. As somebody that hadn't read Alita before, and this was my first time, and doesn't know anything, well, I didn't know anything about like Last Order or anything like that when I first read this. There was a lot of things that could have been probably addressed or explained a little bit better for people like myself. But for fans and knowing what I know now, this actually does make more sense. So I guess if you have already read Alita, probably didn't even bat an eye to this. But if you're somebody like me, that's why I'm kind of going into this. But this basically explains that this part right here where Alita is blown up and seemingly dead into a lot of nice pieces, that is the canon ending, so that it is in line with Last Order and that story that continues in that series. These next two chapters that follow are part 1 and part 2, I guess you could say, of the original run's, I guess, first intended ending. Now, it is a little weird because, the first part of this, I guess, retconned ending has Alita being resurrected by Dusty, which technically I think is still part of canon if you think about it, because I think Last Order, at least from what I read, Last Order seemingly has the same type of events happen. I don't think it's exactly the way it is shown here, which is probably why that message is shown before this chapter, and probably also just don't want to ruin the flow of the readers, obviously reading. But needless to say, the flower, both the flower parts are, again, part of that original ending. So you have Alita sacrificing herself to become a space flower, and then also the second part of this where she is essentially resurrected for who knows what time this is now, but this time being in flesh and blood and being reunited with Figure. So I guess I wanted to go after making that correction and setting the record straight. Does this change or affect my enjoyment or how I see the end of this series in any way? And to be honest, it does and it doesn't. It doesn't in the sense that the feelings that I had towards it are still pretty in line, because the thing that I chose to see as canon and the ending of the series is actually the truth. It is actually the canonical ending. Now, granted, these other chapters that I didn't like that much, for those out there, I mean, you could still see it as the ending. I guess at one point it originally was. But to me, it doesn't really have any bearing when we're talking about, I guess, Alita as a franchise, and if you're looking at all the other series that have come after it. So to me, it's good news. It's good in that sense. I think that was probably a good call by the author. Sometimes that's not all the, not necessarily the case, but I think in this case it is. Knowing that that was the original ending at some point, though, I think that definitely would affect somebody's probably taste for if they were wanting to check out Last Order. But for me personally, I think it was a good decision, and I do like the way, I guess, this is now labeled as the canonical ending. But also, at the same strength, it's been a while since I finished Alita at this point, so even if that last 2 chapters was how I originally thought it was, and that would be essentially the beginning of Last Order, which it isn't. Clarifying here, but even if that was the case, it's been so long now that I just wouldn't care, to be honest with you. Alita is a series that I really loved some of the moments in it, and overall I thought it was a good story, but it's not one that I probably would ever go back to be honest with you. I think this is just something that is going to sit on my shelf as a nice, collection piece, and then, if I have somebody that is interested that I know, then I'll let them borrow it so they can read it. But for me, as a fan, I don't think I'll be going back to it anytime soon. So if the roles were reversed, or I guess the situation was different, then I probably still wouldn't have been overly input heavy on one way or the other. But anyway, guys, I just wanted to make this short little correction. I will try to link this video into the Volume 9 review, so then that way, if there's anybody else that sees it, they won't get, misinformed, and they can see this correction here. But I just want to make that short little video. Not really that important information to say other than what we've already covered. So I will see you guys later, and thank you for bringing stuff to attention, because like I said, I don't like being, misinformative, so whenever there is something that needs to be corrected, I want to be able to be on top of things and get out that correction so that, people can know exactly what they're looking for in the video. But anyway, guys, that'll conclude this, and I'll see you next time. Peace, X.